You know what? I hadn't planned on making that sound so sad. But sometimes there can be a sadness within you that you don't know it's there till you touch it. Sometimes there could be a joy in you that you don't know it's there till you stumble over it. So I walked in here and saw that last light of the sun leaving the sky, and I thought I was feeling pretty happy. But when I walked in here and I started playing my flute, it's here. I guess I touched something that I didn't even know was sad, that was somewhere deep inside, because that is what was coming out of this flute. My name is Sergeant Bowman, Sergeant Elysia Bowman, and how you doing tonight?
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm so sorry you didn't read the fine print. I cannot start talking to you unless there's a certain amount of enthusiasm. If there's no enthusiasm, there's no need for me to be here. So otherwise, I got to walk through that door and make that same entrance I just did. And that's tiring, and takes a lot of energy to build up all that drama. So I'm going to ask you again, how you folks doing tonight?
Fantastic.
You are so close to being legal. Because I'm going to tell you the story that is someone else's story that became my story. This is the story of the 9th Regiment of Cavalry, but I'm the one who lived that particular story. And every soldier got the same story, but they got their own particular way of living it and telling it. So I'm going to tell you my story. My name is Elysia Bowman. And whenever I meet someone, I'm always curious where they're from. And then when you hear how they talk, if they got an accent, that gives you a little bit of the color of where they're from, the sound of where they're from. And I'm from South Carolina. Not just South Carolina, I'm from a little town called Spartanburg. And Spartanburg is a little town, but the people there ain't little at all. The people there are bigger than the town, especially the colored folks. They're not that the white folks there ain't bigger too. They big, but they know it. The colored folks, they don't know it, but they do. And when they feel it, it's a certain day of the week, and that's called Sunday. And if you walk in or walk by that little church we got for the colored folk in Spartanburg, you know fully well that those people know fully well who they are. And there's nothing more powerful in this world than when you meet somebody and they know who they are. Most of us wander around wondering where they are. That's why they got that thing they made up called a compass. It ain't there to find out which way the North Star is lying. It's there so you can find out what part of you's been lying to yourself so you don't even know who you are anymore. So I was taught in a certain way where I know who I am. I know who my family is. And they made certain that I knew it too. My mama, whose name is Ma'am, put it to me a certain way. After a certain bad thing happened. It's a funny thing about bad things. Bad things can be seen as being bad. But over time, something bad can become something good. It's like a child being born into this world. If you listen really carefully, you notice that the mama is not singing a song of joy. She's crying out in pain. So one thing I've learned in my life is that sometimes something beautiful can come into this world, but it comes into this world out of someone else's pain. Ain't that something? You can learn a whole lot about how someone is screaming and yelling with joy. And that was my mama, whose name is Ma'am. And that's the sound she was making from what I heard on the day I was born. I was born January 1st, 1863. And that was the same day that President Abraham Lincoln held a pen over a piece of paper. And with a movement of his fingers over that piece of paper, he was freeing up people he would never even know. And that piece of paper got a name. And the name was the Emancipation Proclamation. Now ain't that something, that a man in an office in Washington, D.C. can move a pen over a piece of paper and change the world. How many folks here know full well that your lives have been changed by such an occurrence in Washington, D.C.? I can't be obvious. I got to be subtle. I got to survive the evening. Well, when Lincoln signed that emancipation, it was only valid in states that were in active rebellion against the Union. And if you were born a colored man or colored boy, however you want to put it, and you were in one of those states that was a border state, then the emancipation did not apply to you. Freedom did not apply to you. You were still enslaved. I was born in South Carolina, and it was definitely in active rebellion against the Union. But only if a Union soldier was right there standing at the door of our little cabin saying, that child being born in here from this day on will be free. If that soldier had been there, I would have been free too. But I wasn't, because I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the first state to secede from the Union. So that meant that even though I was born on the day that freedom come into this world, I was not free. And my mama was not free. And my father was not free. That didn't affect them all that much. Because I can tell you the exact physical dimension. Ain't that a fine word? Chaplain taught me that word, dimension, the size of something. I can tell you the exact physical dimension of freedom. It's a little space in a cabin about 8 to 10 feet that way, and maybe about the same, much smaller over on this side, and that way, and that way. That was the size of the cabin that I grew up in Spartanburg, and that, what I'm telling you, is the exact measurements of freedom. Because inside that cabin, I wasn't a nigger. Inside that cabin, I was my mama's boy. I was Elise Bowman. I was my daddy's child. I was my grandmother's grandson right there in that space, which meant we didn't need Lincoln to be free. All we needed to be free is to have someone who loves you say that you are my child and you have a freedom that no man can take away. And that's the kind of freedom that my people had. Even though our backs may have been whipped like my daddy and my mama, inside, right in here, that's where freedom comes from. And so I was taught that at an early age. And can you tell the lessons were learned? How many of you folks can detect that I got a little bit of attitude? How many of you would say I got more than a little bit of attitude?
That's right.
How many of you would say that I got too much attitude and maybe I could open up my own attitude store if somebody's interested in buying? And I'm telling you this because I want you to know why and how it is that I, Elise Bowman, become a soldier. It was because of a gift. And sometimes a gift, if you look at it from a different light, may not be a gift. It could be a curse. And sometimes you look at a curse from a different light, and it may not be a curse. It could be a blessing. Me learning when I was young that I was a human being is the reason why I'm talking to all of you tonight. How many of you folks can tell me that you are who you are because of some choice that you made or someone made for you when you were a little boy or a little girl? And that choice might have been who your parents were and where you grew up and who were the people around you. All those things are choices that you have nothing to do with, but you get born into someone else's choice. I was lucky enough to be born the son of a man named Daniel and a woman named Lucinda, who I did not even know had those names for a long part of my childhood because I was told that my mama's name was ma'am and my daddy's name was sir. And if I ever looked up at my daddy and I said to him on some fine morning, "How you doing today, Daniel?" Say that morning was Monday. I would have no recollection of Monday. After that, Tuesday might be a bit of a blur, and only Wednesday would there be some measure of clarity. So my mama's name was
Ma'am.
and my daddy's name was Sir.
Sir.
So all this come about from them treating me like I was somebody in that little space in that cabin. But when we walked outside, when I walked outside, when they walked outside that cabin, it was South Carolina. And freedom wasn't anywhere there in Spartanburg. Freedom couldn't be found in Mississippi. Freedom had no business in Alabama. Freedom was never properly introduced to Georgia. And do I even need to bring up the relationship between freedom and Texas? But again, that's not where it is. It ain't out there, it's here. And my parents looked at me, young lady, the way I'm, oh, you should have saw what she just did. She was just like this. As soon as I walked in, she went, I used to do the exact same thing when I had a conversation with my mama or my daddy. Have you ever had a conversation with your mother or your father and you have no recollection of you saying anything at all? And your part of the conversation looked like this? Did you ever try that with your eyes? I'll show you again. I found out growing in South Carolina that this was a weapon of defense. If some white man said something about me and accused me of something, I could have said something like this. Nah, sir, I wouldn't be. I had nothing to do with that. How dare you even say that I did something like that? But you can't say that to a white man in South Carolina and expect to live. So I'd say something like this, and it looked just like this. Sir, you think I did something like that? See? Have you ever tried that? It works. Especially on a mama. Okay? But if you use it too much, it won't work anymore. Because they'll just say, quit that smiling, I know you're up to something. Just let me know. So, if I was raised to think of myself as a human being, how many of you folks think, you tell me back there, if I'm raised to think that I am somebody, am I going to walk a certain way? Yes. If I'm raised to feel that I'm somebody, am I going to talk a certain way? Yes. And if you are walking a certain way and you are talking a certain way in Spartanburg, you might die a certain way. Oh, yeah. Because the colored folk there in Spartanburg were taught for their own well-being. That gets into the whole idea of what constitutes, there's another fine word for you, what constitutes well-being. They were taught to walk a certain way, and it looked like this. And your shoulders had to be loose like that, and you just lowered your head like that, and you just moved along like that, because you want to move in a way that was not threatening to people. So you learn to walk like that, and your feet barely left the ground, because that took a lot of energy, and you don't want to be a threat, so you just shuffle. And you can walk like this. You can walk taller, but it's safer for people to see you, not as anything dangerous. So you walk like that, and you got your head down like that, like there's something of great interest growing out of the soil right there. And you got to look at it to see what it is. And so you're walking like that. But if your parents have taught you that you're somebody, you don't walk like that. How many folks here know somebody that knows they're somebody? How many here is married to somebody that knows they're somebody? And how many of you notice from a distance, because you're not allowed to walk with them, because they somebody, how they walk. And somebody that walks like they're somebody walks like this. And since I was taught that I was no one's, I started walking at an early age like I was somebody. I started talking like I was somebody. And how many folks think that that got to the attention of my mother and my father, who really are somebody? How many of you remember doing something when you were a little boy or a little girl, and somehow, and you can't understand how quickly that happened, but somehow word of what you'd done got back to your parents? Everybody here should be raising their hand. Yeah. And what I did that led me on a path that took me right here into this uniform was I believed what my parents taught me. How many folks here believed what their parents taught you? How many folks here recognize it was dangerous to not believe anything that your parents taught you? So you had to listen. My parents, my father in particular, looked at me one day the way I'm looking at you, and he said, "You a human being. Don't matter what someone says out there, you somebody. You a Leezy Bowman, you my boy. You somebody." And I listened to him. And not too long after, my mama said that. She said, "You ain't no one's nigga. I didn't spend 3 days bringing no nigga into this world. That's too much work. I brought you into this world. And I brought someone, Elise. You my child. I brought you here. And I don't want you to ever forget who you are. Because people out there get lost. And most of those folks that get lost have no idea who they are. But we're all born knowing exactly who we are. Then we spend the rest of our lives forgetting it. So don't you forget who you are. You hear me?
I hear you.
You hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's good. That's good.
I hear you.
So listening to my mama, I started walking and talking like I was somebody. And how long do you folks think it took for the word of who I'd become to get back to my mama and my daddy?
Not long.
No time at all.
No time at all. And in particular, one particular event sparked everything. There was a sidewalk. There is a sidewalk in Spartanburg. And in that sidewalk in Spartanburg, right through the main part of the town, there's that sidewalk that colored people are not allowed to walk on that sidewalk. You folks tell me, who built that sidewalk?
People.
Whose sweat dripped down to that sidewalk? And how many people here feel if you work hard to bring something into this world, whatever you brought into this world belongs to you? It's yours. That's the best kind of ownership there is. Something you make with your own hands and the sweat off your brow. So whose sidewalk was it really?
Yours.
It was the sidewalk of all those colored people in Spartanburg who could not step on it. How many folks think it was wrong? How many really deeply inside feel that was wrong? How many of you can sense, you can just feel it in your bones, you're saying to yourself, "Oh, that's wrong, that shouldn't be that case." How many of you feel that way?
Right here.
Look at all these hands going up. So all I have to say to you is, where were you when I needed you? I looked around for you on that morning when I walked to town because my daddy told me the 13th Amendment meant we weren't enslaved no more. The 14th Amendment meant we had the rights of full citizens of the United States. And the 15th meant we could vote. I figure if I'm not enslaved, if I'm a citizen of this country, and if I can vote, surely, there's another fine word. Notice how I put that together like that? Well, that sounds sweet, didn't it? Surely I could walk on that sidewalk. So how many of you folks here have ever done something wrong? But how many of you that did something wrong were pretty confident at the time you were doing something right? That's what happened to me. I walked into town early on a Sunday morning. And I'm just leading you to why I'm here today. And there in the sun was that sidewalk right there before me. And I looked at it, and I saw the people going back and forth, going to church, quiet. No quiet in this world like a Sunday in the South. And I saw it, and no one was there for a bit, and I went up to it. And I looked around, and no one was there, and I did this. But no one saw me. So I stepped on it. I stepped up on it. And when I stepped on it, I couldn't believe it. The sun seemed so much closer because of the elevation of that sidewalk. And there was a cold wind blowing against my face like you feel up in the mountains. It like they had a taste, a bite to it like snow. And I looked down, and there in the shadows was the dirt where all the colored people were supposed to walk right down there. And it looked so far away. And I started to feel good about it. How many of you folks were doing something bad and started to feel good about it? That's a road you don't want to follow. And I started feeling good about it, so I started walking on that sidewalk. And as I was walking, I noticed that there were other folks there, the folks that were supposed to be there. And I looked at them, but I never forgot my manners. I never forgot how I was raised to tip my hat and to say, how you do? And so when I saw those folks coming toward me who were white and were looking at me a certain way, and they would say things like, well, I just say something like this. How are you, ma'am?
Very well, thank you.
That's not what she said. And then I keep walking, and I see someone, and I tip my hat. Sir, how are you this fine morning?
A fine morning, sir.
That is not what he said. And what I heard was more like, sounded a little bit like this. That boy's going to get himself killed. I heard something a little bit like this. Crazy. And I'm going to leave out the rest of that. I'll just say crazy, but there were words that followed that. But I didn't mind. I didn't care, because I knew I had become and was becoming a man. How many men here have a moment in your history where you felt, I've arrived? And isn't it funny, just when you feel you're arrived, that there's someone and something out there that's trying to take you away? Because I was right there and I had arrived. I made it all the way to the end of that sidewalk, and I made the second mistake of that day. How many folks would say I made more than one mistake on that day? The second mistake was I felt so good about myself, I walked back on the same sidewalk. Slow, like you're drinking something that's good going down. I just wanted to just drink it all in, me becoming a man. And then I got off the sidewalk, and I walked home, and I was feeling good. I was about to start dancing. I was just busting out. I felt like I had become who I was meant to be. And then I got to the stoop of our little cabin, and the door opened before I got there. And I looked up, and up, and up, and there was my daddy. And it was easy to look up at my daddy, because my daddy was about 6'5" and about 270 pounds. I always felt there was far too much of my daddy in this world. I'd go up to the little friends I had when I was a boy, and I'd say, hey, I noticed you ain't got a daddy. You could have a little bit of my daddy. And they'd say, nah, I know your daddy. You can keep your daddy. We don't want anything to do with him. That's what my father was. And he was looking at me the way I'm looking at you, and I ain't picking on you. Something about you I just like. And my daddy just looked at me. Well, that was good. Stand up.
Yeah.
Stand up.
Oh.